Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start shortly. We'll try to be on time tonight. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondent Club of Thailand. My name is Panuwongchaum. I'm a senior correspondent for Reuters and also the past president of the FCCT. I would like to welcome you all to our very apt discussion this evening on sort of the state of Thai politics, the state of play. You know, we've just been a little over a month since the election, which saw a very historic result, and we are joined this evening by a very distinguished panelist from Ajahn Chris Baker, who's joining us online, a well-known historian and Cambridge University Asian History lecturer and a co-author of A History of Thailand. And of course, right here we also have Ajahn Yong Yoon, Associate Professor and Deputy Dean in the Faculty of Economics at Chulalongkorn University. Ajahn Punchada Siriwannabut, Associate Professor, the Faculty of Social Science and Humanities at Mahidol, and of course FCCT's own Saksith Saiyasombut, Thailand Correspondent for Chinese Asia. So I would like to welcome all of you to this discussion. We have been in a sort of amidst of uncertainty since the May 14 election after Move Forward, the progressive young party that have this unexpected victory in many ways creates a really uncertain period ahead of the formation of the government. And as we're looking now towards the next phase with the picking of the House speakers and then eventually the vote for the Prime Minister, I want to find out more from our panelists tonight about what is at stake, what are some of the key contexts, what are some of the key points about this election. So I would like to first go to Ajahn Chris to give us a sort of a historical perspective, if you like, of this particular election result and its aftermath. What does it mean for Thailand? What does it mean for the trajectory of the future by looking at the past? Ajahn Chris Cup, please.
Thank you, Panu, and thank you, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be there. I have a little local difficulty. If we think backwards, and we think backwards to this period since 2006, we have watched this movement to destroy democracy. All the elections were voided. Governments were overthrown. The constitution was torn up. The decentralization process reversed. Environmental laws reversed in practice. Rights, rule of law ignored persistently. New repressive legislation brought in. A whole system of national surveillance under ISOC, the old Communist Suppression Command, brought in. Repression of media, repression of civil society, activists being arrested or exiled, and the old mafias being rehabilitated, meaning the official mafia, the police, and the unofficial mafia, the old godfathers. And this was so consistent that it seemed like normal. This seemed like business as usual. Okay? But if we go back to the 20 years before this period, it was really very different. Over the period from 1988 onwards, the military was weaned out of politics, but initially very successfully. Parliament became established along with political parties, policy platforms. Electoral participation went up from about 40 to 70%. And this parliament did a lot of reforms, basic social welfare, bureaucratic reform, expanding education, support for agriculture. And at the same time, we saw decentralization to local bodies, the first serious laws about protection of the environment, significant liberalization of the media, and a lot of space for civil society. So around the millennium, Thailand was generally touted as the most open society in Southeast Asia. And of course, what a huge difference has been made over the period since 2006. Now, behind all of this is this amazing change that has come over the country, the society, and everything about it. This is Bangkok in about 1980, and that's what it looks like a few years ago. It's changed kind of out of sight. And the key parts of that change, to me, are these. First, that incomes tripled, and people's attitudes change when their incomes go up. Everybody had more education. Thailand became open to the world. In 1980, it was still rather closed in. Now we've had globalization and the internet and the mobile phone and everything else. And perhaps the least recognized, but most important, it has changed from being a rural society to being a mainly urban society. And that's a big change in values, needs, and aspirations. So when we got to the 14th of May, when we got to this moment at about 10 o'clock at night, this was absolutely historic. And this date is etched in the history already. Whatever happens from here on, and many things could happen, I think this turning point has come about. And there are two very interesting charts about this election, which are both on the Wikimedia page. This one shows the polls about preferred party. And you see here that Pita Thai was going very well, and only from January onwards did MFP start to seriously catch up, and then catch up very quickly indeed. The second chart shows the result on the party list. And this shows that the old Pita Thai heartland in the Lao territories is still there. It's still there. It's lost a bit around Chiang Mai, but basically it's still there. But most significantly, almost all of the rest went to MFP. This was an election that wasn't so much driven by kind of rational considerations of this candidate or that. It was a highly emotional, ideological wave of support for these two parties, and particularly for MFP. And why MFP? I mean, we've heard a lot about the generation gap and its use of social media. But to me, there are three really important things. The first is, it's the first Thai party for a long time, that is not at heart a gang of businessmen out to do business. This is really very different. The second is what we saw when MFP became the parliamentary opposition and took on that role in a way that had not been seen before. They were not playing politics in the way the Thai phrase had it. They were not treating a no confidence debate like pantomime. You know, they were treating it as very serious, very well researched accusations against the government over surveillance, over police corruption, and many other things. And the third thing is their party platform, really very different from what we have seen before. Get the military out of politics, conform 112 to the rule of law, introduce basic welfare across the board, and stop favoring the biggest businesses in the country at every turn. And it's worth pointing out, there's nothing very radical about this set of policies, except in the context of Thailand. This is basically a pretty middle-of-the-road, liberal, democratic program. Every other country in the world got the military out of politics 30 years ago. So this is, if you like, a chance for Thai politics to catch up with the big changes in Thai society, and to some extent with the rest of the world. But many people are very frightened by this. This was in the Bangkok Post letters page a week or so ago. MFP's welfare state blueprint could easily be labeled communism. Reading their body language, one can detect that they are dogmatic, unchallengeable, and textbook-like. I mean, you can make fun of this. I mean, it's really giving old ladies pensions communism. But you have to sort of take it seriously. There is a degree of panic amongst parts of the elite. And to the point they're trying to find any method to stop MFP, using the Senate, accusing them of being pawns of US imperialism, saying that they are too young, that Pita is too young. But if you look some of the most successful leaders of countries in the last few years, Peter is exactly the right age. And then the ITV shares, there's MS charges, on and on and on and on. Why we see this is really very simple indeed. Under an authoritarian regime, huge benefits go to a small elite who want nothing to change because they're doing very, very well. And they have the money and the influence to invest in getting exactly what they want. And by this small elite, I mean military hierarchy, which is feudal, the senior bureaucracy, the judiciary, the top however many companies, the old provincial bosses, and you could go on a bit. And there's a second level of that to people who are just nervous about change, particularly people in the older generation. And there's an even outer level of the neighboring countries who all have geriatric governments and are all very concerned that Thailand's youthful party will be a good example to their own people. And of course, China on the outside as well. So their issue is how to deal with MFP. But that is easy. I mean, they've dealt with all kinds of parties and leaders before. It's the second part that's difficult, how to deal with MFP without provoking chaos. And think of what happened after 2019 when they got rid of Future 4. We had a chaos of words. We had things being said that hadn't been said before, which were believed to be unsayable. We had, of course, the chaos on the streets. And perhaps even more important, which had in the end, which it went on and on to the point it had to be contained by methods that I don't think have been seen anywhere else in the world, like bringing shipping containers into the center of the capital city to build a barrier. But perhaps even more worrying is the chaos of thought. I think for the old elite to see the school children, and especially secondary school girls, having such a big part in these demonstrations was profoundly worrying. It showed just how much had changed in this country. So that's it. This is a wonderful cartoon by Kunarun from Matichon, and it says, "The daring man and the fierce wave." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ajahn Chris. Very wonderful presentation, and I hope you, and on behalf of the people here at the club, hope that you get better and get well soon, Krab.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll go off and watch it. I'll go off and watch it on Facebook. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ajahn. Thank you. Get well soon. All right. That was Ajahn Chris. He's happened to be tuning in from his hospital bed. But anyway, we're very grateful for that. Next, I would like to look at the various, scenarios or the various issue that has to do with this, the step towards formation of the government and the step towards sort of, transition from what we have essentially this almost a decade of military or a conservative rule to basically this kind of what Ajahn Chris said, an unprecedented sort of formation of this new government. So I guess we go to Ajahn Bunchada first to talk about sort of the scenarios towards the formation of government, please.
Good evening. Well, maybe I changed the topic a little bit because just to follow up what Professor Chris Baker just talked about. Well, he talked about move forward parties a lot, but then I'm just gonna tell you guys about what's going on with other political parties, Parliamentary, Democrat, and some other political party that run in this election. Well, in this election, I observed that actually it's a lot of a surprise that happened in this election. But with my limited times, I think it's about 4 that I want to raise in this talk. First, of course, the move forward won the elections, and it's the power of cyber that they have been using during the campaigns. But if you look at the the surveys and the polls, before 2 weeks before the election, Move Forward did not really get a large number of votes, compared to Pheu Thai, they always run in the second. But, during the last 2 weeks, it changed, and the poll changed really fast. If you have a chance to, to see the poll that conducted by some government officer, which is not really publicly, released to public, we can see that Move Forward, gain a large number that we cannot really expect, and then the outcome is show it's one, that's the number one that won the party at this time. One of the important things, I don't think that's only the social network that they have been used to, mobilize all the votes, but the way they do the campaigns, the words that they say that, mi lung mai mi lao, or have uncle, no us. This is a really important term that make people decide to vote for either Pheu Thai or the Move Forward parties. And this is a really strong message to all the supporters who are kind of bored with the military government and other, military, pro-military governments. Second, and that I found is really surprising, is the factions. Faction, basically in Thai we call it ban yai, or big house, right? Faction has played an important role in Thai politics for a very long time. I think back in, the first election in Thailand, we already have faction, and it has been developed over time. Normally, as Professor Chris just mentioned, most of the faction, they are the powerful elite family that control a particular province. In this election, a lot of faction lost that seat. One of the faction that I really surprised is, faction belong to Rayong. In Rayong, belong to the deputy minister of public health, Saksith Pita, and also, other faction belong to Parliamentary party in Samut Prakan province and some other political parties. These factions, normally they have win the election for, I cannot count, it's a lot of, I think they always won the election all the time, but in this election, many of them lost. And also Asawahem family in Samut Prakan province lost our seat in that province as well. But there are also other factions still survive. So I got a lot of questions from my colleagues, asking whether or not factions or the big house going to be away and fade away or disappear from Thai politics. I would say no, they will survive, and they will run again in the next and following elections. Well, look at one of the political party that have a lot of factions in the party, Parliamentary. Most of the important factions in Parliamentary, they are still survive. And they got all seats in that province, which is, it means that they are still powerful in that particular province. But if you look at the party list score in those provinces, for example, in Kamphaeng Phet, Phetchabun, even though the faction won all seats, but, Move Forward won all the party list seats and party list score in those provinces that has been controlled by particular factions. So I think the next election, factions still play a role, but they will move around. And, I think there's more potential to move back to Pheu Thai party, because most of these factions, they were the members of Pheu Thai before they moved to Parliamentary or other political parties. The third one is the loss of the Democrat. I wrote a lot of articles about Democrat for a very long time, analyze why they win, why they lost, how they maintain their, connection in the southern parts and kind of those stuff. And this election, I was expecting them to get only 20 seats when I released this, and then I wrote a paper on this. I got a complaint from a lot of Democrat members, why you said it's 20, but if you look at how they deal with the campaigns, on how they do the campaign in the south or in Bangkok, they just totally ignore Bangkok. Well, Democrat, have won in Bangkok, all the seats in Bangkok before. And in 2019, they lost all, and then also this time as well. How is the futures of the Democrat in Thailand? I think they still survive, because Democrat is the only political party that is really, I would say, institutionalized compared to other political parties. Even though they lost election, but I think the party as an institution, they still survive. But it's really important to see, who's going to be the next leader of the Democrat after that internal election, which hope to be, happened in the next, in the next months, because now they don't really have a real leader of the Democrat yet. And the last one is the power of the cyber and the social network that have been used by Move Forward and also Pheu Thai Party. Maybe some of you might think that why other conservative sides of party don't really use social media on campaigns. Actually, they did, but it's not really that strong. I interviewed one of the members in one of the conservative parties, asking them, why don't you do contents on Instagram or TikTok? I got a really surprise answer. They told me that we don't know what kind of content we will do it. So basically, they don't understand how to do the social media. So I did not mean like everyone don't understand, but maybe that person that I interviewed, they don't really know that to do stuff online, you just take picture, you say something, and then that's it. You don't need to do content or anything. So then that's why I think they try to do it, and then you can see, a month or 2 months before the election, some conservative party, they start to do campaigns online, but I think it's too late. And because they don't understand the social media, so then that's why they did not really success on how to do the social media during the campaigns. Well, I still have a couple more minutes. I will gonna talk a little bit about the government formation. I think I agree with a lot of analysis that Pita and Move Forward has a hard time to be a government and prime minister. I don't think that the government, I don't think that all the regulations, all the rule, TITV shareholding and those kind of stuff can prevent Pita. It's not a major factor, but the most important factor is the Senate. I don't see any possibility for Move Forward to gain 376 votes in the two houses together. So I think it's really difficult for Move Forward to, lobby or the Senate to vote for them. I got a question from one of the embassy that I was giving a talk. They asked whether or not Move Forward have a connection with the Senate and can lobby them to vote for the Move Forward. I don't think that they have that strong connection compared to Pheu Thai. If any democratic sized party wanna lobby the Senate to vote for them, I think Pheu Thai has more chance to attract and then bring the Senate to vote for them. But the Move Forward, because as Professor Chris mentioned, they are young and they don't really have a connections. Some of them have been in politics really short time, so then they don't really know anyone. I think it's so hard for them to make a connection with the Senate. If they want help, it's Pheu Thai, and of course, again, I don't think that Pheu Thai would help Move Forward. I mean, really help them to get a vote from the Senate, because if not, I think Pheu Thai would do it for themselves, not just to support Move Forward to be the government. So then I end my talk of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaprachan. Very concise and very broad views on other political parties as well. Next, I want to go to Associate Professor Yun for more of an economic, perspective on the situation. How do you see this transitional phase and also the actual transition towards a new government after more than almost a decade of conservative rule?
Right. Okay. Yes. Thank you for having me here. Actually, I'm quite new in understanding the political side, but I've been trying to follow the economic implications. I think, so the big question, before, how do you put it? The Move Forward and Pheu Thai have been pushing many promises during the campaign. The big question is, can they deliver, right? Right? There's always the question of, can you pay for all these support things? There's going to be, of course, other things like minimum wage increase. How will that affect companies doing businesses here? There's also the question of increasing corporate tax, which initially I think Pheu Thai will not go for that one, right? There are questions about, so how do you raise money to fulfill your promises? So this is the one area which I was thinking about on my way here. And it has to do a lot around the tax structure, because I think 80% of the revenue, of Thai revenue comes from taxes, right? So it depends how they're going to play, how the tax situation is going to be played out. So there is also this question, I think if I'm not mistaken, the the move forward is following a more redistributive kind of policy, while the POITA is more like pro-growth business, right? And so what they would want to see how the tax reforms happen will be quite different. Move forward is also talking about taxing wealth, introducing a wealth tax, which is, I think, is very difficult to do. Also, there's a lot of legislation things you need to change, and whether that will be successful or not is another question, because if you introduce wealth taxes, it will change behavior, right? So people know how to evade paying taxes, paying this kind of tax. So the other one would be, of course, to do something with VAT. Right now, VAT is, I think, 7%, and the idea, I think, from POITA is to bring it up to 10%. Now, most people will say that's a bad idea, right? Especially consumers. But there are papers that show that if you do it properly, you can actually, it doesn't have to be so bad on consumers, right? It just the timing has to be done properly. So these are things that, of course, will be played out depending on who comes into power, right? And of course, the question of corporate tax again. As a foreigner, there are many foreign companies that are looking at this issue of corporate tax. I think, was it last year? No, 2 years ago, there was an agreement by 190 countries saying that corporate tax should be set at a minimum 15%. In Thailand, it's right now 20, and I think Move Forward is thinking of bringing it up to 23, right? And the question is, how will this affect foreign investments, big companies coming in? And I think they are trying to move away from tax holidays to more like a grant system. So you pay your taxes, we'll pay you back again. But so there's lots of foreign companies are looking at this in a quite skeptical way, afraid to enter right now. But the interesting thing is that there's a lot of talk in the media, there are a lot of concerns over the many years, but Thailand somehow, in my mind, has survived very interestingly. It's I don't know how to put it in English. In Korean, there's a word for that, but it's tenacious, kind of thing. I mean, if it was worse than this, the previous government would have had a lot of trouble, right? I mean, not the current government, rather. I don't know. So somehow the economy keeps on going, and a lot of this has to do with the informal sector, because the informal sector tends to cushion all the crises coming in and out, of Thailand. Thailand has faced very many political, man-made catastrophes over the many years, including the recent one, Corona, right? But the informal sector somehow is able to cushion all this. And the interesting thing, what I found with this current elections, is that they are now addressing the questions of the informal sector, right? Or sometimes indirectly by talking about minimum wage, raising the minimum wage. I think that's going to be, it's going to happen. I think that one's going to happen. It's going to hit a lot of companies, and also the banking sector. I'll finish in 2 minutes. So in the banking sector as well is now going to open data. So they're moving away. I think they are using the UK model, and that is going to help renovate, pick up the banking sector as well, which is actually the lifeblood for most businesses, right? Just as a background, I'm Korean, by the way, and I've been in Chulalongkorn University for about 10 years. And one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, why don't we have many Korean companies here? I mean, you see Japanese companies, you see German companies. And for a long time I thought, because we cannot compete with German companies, we cannot compete with Toyota. I mean, they've been here for years, right? But nowadays, I think I changed a little bit. I think it's because we don't have a Korean bank here. Okay, we had it before '97, before Tom Yum-Goong crisis, and then they closed shop. The same with Hyundai. I think if you go around, you don't find many Kia cars, right? No Korean cars. But if you go to Singapore or Vietnam, there's full of Korean cars. And the reason is that we made a few bad decisions in '97. We just pulled out. So the banking sector is very, very important. I think this is a close one to watch, because that's going to tell us how business will move forward. Yeah, okay. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Kabajan. We will actually have a lot of questions to you, but we'll do that at the Q&A session. So lastly, we go to our very own fellow journalist Kun Saksith, who has followed and covered this election very closely, and of course Saksith has a personal interest in Thai politics for a long time. So you're a long time observer for over a decade at the very least. So tell us how do you see this election plays out and everything.
Thanks very much, Panu. The last time that I was sitting here on the panel was about 10 years ago, and yes, time's passed a lot. And looking back, I kind of am a little bit surprised, and also a little bit had a lot of thoughts about what happened in the past 10 years. First of all, professionally, I wouldn't have thought that I would be still covering Prime Minister Prayut for most of that time. I'm not saying that because at that time you have to go back. 2013, that was during the government of Yingluck Shinawat, and a military coup. At that time, yes, the possibility was there, but it came a year later, given what everything has happened, and also the staying power of Prayut Chan-o-cha, and the transformation we have seen during the years from a stern military ruler to a almost folksy, at least the attempt of a folksy politician. That is something that we have definitely seen, especially during this election campaign. Some might say that it was a necessity for Prayut to go into this campaign like this, because we all know that he switched political parties because of political infighting with the ruling Palang Pracharat Party. He and his supporters and the closest advisors have then spun themselves off into the United Thai Nation Party. But then there's also the big question, right? Like, as a new party like this, what is your platform other than we have the incumbent prime minister? And it turns out that it was a real difficulty for them to get that message across that, first of all, the prime minister has actually switched to another party, and also what else does this party actually stand for? And also, more often than not as well, all the achievements of the past government, whose achievements are they actually? So mostly during this election, I was covering UTN and Prime Minister Prayut for most of the time. And when I talked to party leaders and party seniors, I asked them, like, okay, you had so many different parties in the past coalition, at one time 18 different parties in that coalition. So whose achievement was that? And they told me, well, by virtue of Prime Minister, it's the Prime Minister's achievement, because he put it on the agenda at every cabinet meeting. Okay, fine. But then also, as the election campaign went on, we kind of also saw that, the way that the campaigning was in Thailand was very odd, in the sense of that we all said in the media that this was a bread and butter election, that it was a lot about bread and butter issues. We had 2 or 3 years of the pandemic. The economy was in very dry straits. Inflation was driven high, very up. Cost of livings went up as well. So that's why many political parties thought that the answer to that would be bread and butter issues. And as Yong also highlighted some of them already as well. At one point, it became almost indistinguishable for the voters. It was almost like a question of, okay, how many zeros are there with the populist policies? The more surprising then, compared to that, was of course then the outcome of the election. We all thought it would be either Pheu Thai, we all thought it would be either one of the parties from the past coalition, but it was actually Move Forward. But as you also already pointed out, there were many reasons why Move Forward has won this election. And one of the points that I want to talk about when I covered this election campaign was also the way how the media worked, social media and also mainstream media as well. Those people that know me know that I don't put much trust in opinion polls. In my opinion, they have been not always the most reliable source, but in this election campaign, what was the most interesting for me wasn't what went into the opinion polls, as in what the people have responded, what the people have said to these political opinion polls, but rather the effect every time an opinion poll gets published, what effect it had on the public discourse. And constantly, we have seen that the opposition parties have been in the lead in these opinion polls, and that has, of course, always created a certain hype effect. So much so that it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. It actually became a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that Pheu Thai and Move Forward were the parties with the most seats. So that was one surprise for me. And as we have seen in all the election data that, big gains for the Move Forward party in many places. Bangkok almost got the whole city. The suburban provinces around Bangkok, they got them as well. They even won Thaksin's backyard in Chiang Mai as well. In the south, the whole island of Phuket as well. And then as we have seen in the map from Ajahn Chris Baker, the votes that went for the party list system, also very many places that went orange as well. So this is something that really goes to show that there was a wide response to the political situation, definitely a orange wave, so to speak. The funny thing is that my thoughts were going along the lines of that. Was that actually a pro-Move Forward vote, a pro-Move Forward majority, or was it just merely an anti-Prayut vote? The answer might be somewhere in the middle, and I think that it was the perfect storm and the perfect circumstances for Move Forward to come into this situation. And even though it wasn't, I would even go so far that it wasn't even an anti-Prayut vote. It was an anti-politics business as usual, because as you have hinted before, that many banyais have lost as well. Not all of them, but many of the banyais, especially here in Bangkok, have lost. Thaksin and Pheu Thai also had a lot of losses as well. So much so that we are seeing the beginnings of a post-Thaksin era in Thai politics. What do I mean with that? When we say that the classic Move Forward voter skews more young, skews more urban, skews more technologically savvy and more urban, the young one is the emphasis here, because we are looking at a generation of voters that is old enough to vote, but maybe too young to have experienced the Thaksin years and see what has actually happened about 20 years ago during that time. So, and of course, the social media game, of course, was very strong there as well. But to that point, I want to say that, yes, some of the parties that are of the outgoing government have attempted to do social media as well. Definitely the United Thai Nation Party that I was covering definitely put in a lot of effort to do social media on TikTok and other platforms as well, especially because they had to get the message out there that Prayut is actually at another party. So that was actually one of the first social media posts that they had to get out there. As a side note, when I was also covering the Palang Pracharat party. I went to a campaign event in Chachoengsao province, and I had an older lady coming up to me and said, excuse me, when is the Prime Minister coming? What do you mean the Prime Minister is coming? Yeah, when is Prayut coming? It's like, he's not with this party anymore. Did you know that? Oh, well, whatever. And she went home. So, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, that was the messaging problem they really had to get across. But curiously enough, there was a statistic going around during the election time where it was listed how much the parties spent on Facebook adverts, as in to have paid posts popping up in the timeline more often. UTN was one of them that they have paid a decent amount of money to have their posts promoted. But then, according to this statistic at least, Move Forward paid zero, not a single baht. So it was apparently all organic. And that's what I mean with the effects of hype, the effects of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that had its own dynamic. So that goes to my point about the post-election phase now. And the hype here is still going strong, but it has been over a month since the election, and that has the hype has died down a little bit. Whether this delay or this gap, this interregnum, so to speak, is by design, we could have waited even longer for all the MPs to be endorsed, but the Election Commission decided to have that sooner. What I'm trying to say is that we have seen the initial excitement, not only the day after the elections, where, at least in my experience, it was unprecedented to have a political party host a victory parade in Bangkok. and not only that, but also to have a lot of people showing up spontaneously on a Monday afternoon and Monday evening. That was something that I have never seen before. That was something that the vibe also was very electrifying as well, where you had so many supporters actually being happy about the outcome of an election. But then we saw the first attempts of the coalition formation, where there was a lot of chatter from outside these parties affecting the negotiations among the parties themselves. And this is the first time where we are also seeing the negative sides of political fandom, so to speak, where you had very diehard supporters of political parties going at each other on social media and showing very little willingness to acknowledge that political discourse needs compromise. And this is something that could be setting the tone going forward, whatever kind of coalition we will have, whatever coalition we will see. Political fandom and a revived excitement, especially from younger voters in politics, has definitely been one of the factors that has moved forward into this election victory. But putting so much hope into this also creates the danger of big disappointments as well when they fail to deliver. I mean, we have seen in other countries where when we have seen very drastic or very big swings from one government to another government. For example, when Barack Obama became president of the United States, Justin Trudeau in Canada as well. These are where you can see there was a lot of hope and there was a lot of hype in there, but then that of course tapered off over the years as well. However, the problem here in Thailand is of course that we have many elements that are, let's say, not part of the parliamentary system, that are possibly, that have the possibility and the powers to interfere. Talking about the senators, talking about the military, talking about other elements of the state that may or may not prevent Pita to become prime minister or prevent this government to form. But now there's obviously what Ajahn Chris Baker said. How do you stop them without creating chaos? How do you get rid of this government or this government to be without having protesters on the street? So these are careful considerations that they have to do right now. And the question is whether or not they are going to have the problem right now, or they are trying to finally realize that Thai politics has changed, and whether or not they're going to adapt or not. My last concluding thoughts before we go into the Q&A. I said before, the last time that I was here was 10 years ago. The panel that I was on was about media and ethics, but it was also about freedom of expression. It was about how the discourse was at that time. And I said at the time that, there were many people that still think that they can decide what others think. I used the term kopyutiyo nai tai kala, so the frog under the coconut shell. Basically, it refers to, when you're a frog under the coconut shell, you think that the shell itself is the whole horizon. But obviously, there's a whole another horizon beyond that as well. And I was surprised that in the years after that kala became very much a slang term for, short-sightedness and things like that as well. So in that spirit, I hope that this election and this point in time where we are in Thai politics, that maybe we are finally leaving the coconut shell. Maybe we are seeing a different kind of Thai politics. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saksith. So we now move on to the Q&A session. There's a microphone at the back of the room. If anyone would like to ask a question, please identify yourself, say where you're from, and also which panelists you want to direct your question to. I'm sure there's a lot of question and curiosity about the upcoming poll. Please.
Good evening. I have a question for Saksith. My name is Alessandro Ursic. I'm a freelance journalist The Thai Senate is due to be renewed next year. And I would like to understand who exactly will appoint the 250 new senators, and if this can and will be a factor in the formation of the new government and the timing of the formation of the new government. Sorry. Again, the whole thing.
Okay.
Why is it echoing?
Do you understand?
Yeah,
So basically, the Thai Senate is supposed to be renewed next year. Who will appoint the senators? And is this a possible factor in the formation of the new government? Meaning, the people that want to pull the strings, could they find a way to forestall the formation of the new government until they appoint the senators again?
Question directed to you.
Okay, thank you, Ali. So, as we all know, just to summarize, we have two chambers in the parliament. We have the 500 MPs and the 250 senators that have been appointed by the previous military government. They still have 1 year left on their term, so that also means that they are also going to vote in this prime minister's vote. And to that, we need to get to the magic number of 376. So that means, so basically we have 300 something currently on the coalition side. They need 64 senators or other MPs in order to beat them out. So the question is about the next Senate, basically, and who picks them. So I have to look up again how exactly they're being voted. But the thing is that last time they was directly picked by the military government. It's going to be a little bit more complicated than that. So basically, committees, etc., being assembled by different representatives of several different groups. And the categories there as well. So the first important thing is that if I'm not mistaken, the next Senate will definitely not have a role in picking a prime minister anymore. So that is definitely will not be a factor anymore. And secondly, it's more important to look at the senators that we have right now and what they are thinking right now. We have. It is reported that about 20 senators have tentatively said that they're going to vote with the party whoever has the most seats. We have a few senators that have said categorically that they are not going to vote for Pita as a prime minister. But then we have a majority of senators that we actually do not know how they think, because they are conspicuously quiet right at this point. But I'm definitely sure that a lot of these people are thinking about their political future. It could be with one of the political parties, it could be somewhere else. So these are careful considerations that I just mentioned that they are doing right now. But to answer your question again very shortly, the next Senate will not play a role in the prime ministers, will not play a role in picking the next prime minister, but it will still be, the upper chamber that will vet all the bills that are coming in from the parliament. Does this answer your question?
So yes, it's going to be reduced to 200 members, not 250. It will be basically selected among all the associations. So, for example, various chambers, a representative of different professions. So they're going to have a sort of a peer-reviewed kind of proposal. They're going to, each of these associations will be kind of sending in their people into the system. They would not have, as Saksith said, a role in picking the prime minister, but they will still scrutinize legislations. If they strike down legislation, the House of Representatives can still pass the law, even if they don't have the consent of the Senate. So that's. I hope that answers your question. It's basically become a more ceremonial upper house with some checks and balances, but less power than this past 5 years.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Please.
Hi, I'm Pia, former board member at FCCT. So I have a question for Jan Panchida and also Saksith as well. How do you see the scenarios play out? I think this is what's on everyone's mind. Because anyone, not just Kun Pita, needs to reach 376 votes is an uphill battle. And basically, you just need to reach that number until a new government can be formed. So how do you see this play out? Okay, if as Ajahn mentioned, that it's quite difficult. It's very difficult or nearly impossible to get all, 60-something senators to vote for them. Then they have to maybe lobby with other parties as well. Would that be, if not Pita, would it be the Pheu Thai, even if they, say no every single day? But in that scenario, and will there be any change to the MOU, the pact that has been made to the coalition as well, if this number will never be reached? Thanks.
All right. This is the question that I always get. I have 3 scenarios that possible. First, Pita won the seat as the Prime Minister with 376, which is, for me, I don't think any chance that would be possible. That's a rumor that in this morning that Move Forward sent someone to talk and negotiate with Phum Jai Thai party to vote for them for the Prime Minister. I don't know whether it's true, but every time that this kind of new release from this media, it's always true. So if they can get 376, the MOU, as you asked, is still survive. Maybe I add a little bit more about MOU from myself. I don't think this is a good time to do the MOU because I don't think that MOU is a good thing for the coalition government. If you decide the MOU, a lot of party will fighting, what kind of a policy they want, and also it's not good for the supporter. When the Move Forward did not include the amendment of the Lei Majesty Law 112 in the MOU, so it get a lot of trouble and problems among the supporters. So the first scenario, Pita won the 376, so then he can become the Prime Minister. The second scenario is the first voting session, he could not really win the 376 seat, which is I interviewed couples of Move Forward MPs. They told me that the party will repeating the process, trying to repeat the voting sessions again and again and again until they get it. But I don't think other coalition party would be okay to do it. So I think if the first time, they could not win the 376s, I think Pheu Thai will switch to be the leaders, the coalition leaders. So Pheu Thai will, there have 2 options for Pheu Thai. If Pheu Thai continue to be with Move Forward, it's again, I don't think the Senate will vote for them. And I don't think that Pheu Thai can get 376s except that they have a deal with other political parties. And if Move Forward still with Pheu Thai, I don't think other party from the conservative side will join Pheu Thai in the second options. So Pheu Thai have a high potential to form a coalition government with other political party, especially from the conservative side. And that's a big rumor. All the rumors in Thailand, I think it's always true. So then if the second option is possible, Pheu Thai will be a Prime Minister. And I think, for me, I think Sethar would be the good option to be nominated as a Prime Minister for Pheu Thai. But this is another thing that, all the fortune tellers in Thailand, they say that only people, the possible MP, Prime Minister of Pheu Thai should start their name by Paw or Paw. I'm not sure whether you heard about it, but it's on the news every time. So then, if you believe fortune teller, I don't think that Sethar can be the Prime Minister. It should be someone who start by Paw, which is P letters. And the last option is the competition between the coalition, the Democratic side and the conservative side. Well, for the first sessions, the first time of voting sessions, a lot of people say that they will let Pita, only the one candidate, to go through all the voting sessions, and then the conservative side will not send anyone to compete with Pita. But in the third option, if the conservative side nominates someone to compete with Pita, of course they will get vote from the Senate. So it means we will have a minority government. So then this is the three options that I think is possible at this time.
Yeah, I want to add. I mean, I'm not going to speculate too much about what may or may not happen, but I want to give a couple of thoughts about, for example, a minority government would be probably being passed in the Prime Minister's vote, but could be then toppled in any other vote, that, especially when it comes to the budget, when it comes to the no confidence vote, that's definitely not sustainable. But beyond that, I think the trouble right now is that I want to preface this by saying that I think most people have not seen Move Forward win this election. Haven't seen it coming that Move Forward would win this election. Probably this is me being speculating that Move Forward may have not seen it coming either. What I'm trying to say is that they have to learn a lot very quickly, and definitely they have to learn not to be in opposition, but be in the driving seat very quickly in a very short amount of time. To your point, what you said, that they have no contacts to the Senate, that they have to establish these contacts to the Senate before. And I can definitely imagine that the senators would come back saying, you have been talking crap about us for the past 3 years and now you want our help? It could be a little bit awkward. That's my point, what I'm trying to say. The problem is also with the MOU, to your point, I think it's fascinating that Move Forward wants to do things very differently, in a very orderly, institutionalized, in a very structural manner as well. That's why they came up with this MOU as well. I mean, back in the day, politicians would agree with the handshake and then pretend like nothing has happened if things go the other way. Usually at the back in the time, it would be different parties would meet. They say, okay, what cabinet do you want? What cabinet do you want? Shake hands. Okay, that's it. But then to agree on ideals, to agree on policy, on black and white paper, it's definitely something very principled, but it's also a very hard record to be measured by. And that is exactly where I agree with you. This is something where the disappointment could come in as well. So there's danger there, and I can definitely tell you, I definitely know that they have been fighting over every single syllable until the very last minute before they published that MOU. That's why they had to delay it for half an hour before they came out to the press, because they were still fighting over every single last syllable. So this is something, even if this coalition comes to pass, even if Peter will become Prime Minister, it will be a very uneasy alliance between Pheu Thai and Move Forward and all the other parties together, trying to find some common ground. The common ground right now that they have is that, well, at least it's not Prayut, but going to be working together and we have, for example, heard the infighting about the Speaker of the House. And I kept thinking to myself, if they're already fighting over the Speaker of the House that much, how hard are going to the fights over other cabinet seats going to be? So this is something that we have to keep in mind going in. And another point, lastly, finally, that all the other scenarios where in Thai we would say that it's being said right now, somlon, so dropping the orange, right? So basically, if Move Forward fails at any point, in any point in time, for example, if Pheu Thai is going to backstab them, which is something that the hardcore Move Forward supporters are always fearing that this might happen. The problem is, well, not really the problem, but the observation that we have made during this election is that we have seen Move Forward establish themselves as a political force, and that they are definitely here to stay. And whatever might happen to them will definitely have ripple effects and echoes to the next election as well. What I'm trying to say is that they try to banish this political lot before that. When the Future Forward Party has been dissolved 3 years ago, the expectation was that this political movement will fizzle out. The opposite happened. If something happens to them again, it's probably the opposite might happen again. This is my point, saying that you have a very strong political fandom, you have a strong voter base that is very dedicated, and they will probably show up at the next polls again as well.
Thank you, Saksith.
May I add a little bit?
Oh, please, Ajahn.
Yeah,
just one moment.
I think next, if this time Move Forward cannot form the government, next time, as Saksith said, that they're gonna has a high possibility to win the landslide victory. And next election, I think it's going to be competition between Pita Thai and Move Forward.
Yeah.
And most of the factions that belong to the conservative parties, they will move around to join other political, particularly Pita Thai.
Good Thai. Yeah. Please.
Hi, my name is Daniel Pellerin. I'm a professor at the International College at Mahidol. My question is about this odd mechanism of the Senate election of the Prime Minister, right? So I understand how it was put in place as a kind of check on the process, but the big problem with electing a Prime Minister and an executive independently of the legislative support is always, what do you do if the two come apart, right? So the question I would have for you is, it's all very well if the Senate balks at voting for Pita or the likely majority coalition, but what is supposed to happen if they don't? Right? I mean, presumably, so my question would be, does this constitution actually allow anybody to govern without a majority? Or do you, in fact, need the parliamentary majority, and the Senate will have to find a way to support somebody who commands that support, right? So what I have trouble seeing is, it's all very well to say the Senate will not elect the winner, right? But where do you get your parliamentary support if you're not going to do that? Number one. And number two, do you need that parliamentary support, or does the Constitution actually allow you to get around it?
Anyone?
Yep. I think I already partially answered that question. Like, a minority government is going to be very hard. It's going to be toppled at every no confidence vote. It's going to be toppled at every budget vote. So the point is that the point of the Senate majority here, having the Senate being involved at any point of time, is only for the Prime Minister's vote. So this is where it is being the most crucial. You know, when it comes to other legislation of that, it's being two separate chambers that are voting separately on these matters. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you that, you know, a minority government is unsustainable in that regard. And the Constitution, I think, to my knowledge, yes, it's legally possible, but realistically and practically, probably not the best model in that.
Maybe I add a little bit more. In Thailand, after the elections, politicians and factions can move around. Yeah. So basically, even though they have a minority government, there's a high potential that they can get MP from other political parties to join them. Even the Move Forward themselves. You know, you remember in the last elections, a large number of Move Forward MP moved to other political party as well. I hope that it's not going to happen again, but what you call it, Wu Hao, right? The snake?
Cobras.
Cobra, they move around, and it's possible for the minority government to attract all this MP to join them after that.
Yeah. To add to that, but however, all the Move Forward people that have joined other parties, and especially Bunjata Party, they all lost.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, that's what Deputy Prime Minister Wisanu kind of let it slip, right? He said a minority government would not be minority for long, because, you know, money kicks in, right? That's what.
But where could that majority possibly be? That's what I don't see. You know, what alternative is there? Would Pita Thai govern with the generals? And that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, but then
I don't see any majority, really.
All I'm going to say is stranger things have happened in Thai politics.
Lisa Martin from Agence France Presse, and I'm also the president here at the FCCT. Thank you so much to the panel for your insights tonight. I'm interested in the argy-bargy over the speaker. Why is that an important gig, and why are Pita Thai and Move Forward really hammering that one out?
It's, yeah, I mean, as I said before, I'm very fascinated by this argy-bargy, and that is already happening at this point during the coalition talks. The answer is actually very simple, because Move Forward has a legislative agenda that they want to push, and they want to be in control of this legislative agenda. The Speaker of the House, I mean, like in any other parliament, is an important role in that sense that that person is the one who sets the agenda for all the parliament session. That is the one who can also block certain drafts to come in and not come in at certain points as well. So I think that is why Move Forward, you know, being those, what we have heard from Ajahn Chris Baker, they stood out because of their conduct in parliament and their legislative work so far. So this is something that they are very good at, and so that's why they want to continue and keep riding the wave. And so that's why they think that being in control of the legislative, not only in terms of having the most seats in MPs, but also having one who sets the agenda, is definitely something that they are gunning for. Now, Pita, on the other hand, they have made the argument saying like, well, but then Move Forward haven't won a total landslide. They haven't have an absolute majority. We only are behind like a dozen of seats or so. So we need you to give us something. So that's why they are saying that because it is such a prestigious role, that they want this seat as well, or rather that they feel, for lack of a better word, entitled to. The thing is that, but also, there's no rule that says that the party with the most seats has to also be the Speaker of the House. The last parliament, it was Chonli Party from the Democrat parties, and we all know, didn't have the most seats in parliament as well. And in the past as well, we had that many times where the Speaker of the House didn't come from the party with the most seats. So it is not a rule, but what I'm trying to say is that Move Forward is still insisting on their principles and on their legislative agenda, and also on their legislative record, that they are saying that this is the best possible way. The problem is that, yes, you have a legislative agenda, but now you're in the same boat with other parties that they have their own legislative agenda, so you need to find some common ground there.
May I add a little bit more? Normally in democratic country, we don't see the number one and number two political party forming coalition together, because this is going to be a big problem in the parliament. They are going to be authoritarian parliamentary system that they can control everything, and of course there will be more conflict between these two in the future when they get into power, if they get into power. So normally when the first one form the coalition, the seconds are in opposition or switching. But this is, I think Thailand is one of the country that we see number one and number two political party joining together.
I'm also curious as what the panel thinks about Thaksin Shinawat's proposed return to the Thai kingdom. Will this potentially be destabilizing for Thailand? And also, Kun Yong, what's sort of the economic impacts that we're seeing from this ongoing political instability?
Okay, so maybe I'll start by, I know nothing about politics, but I'll make my short political statement. But if,
can you boost the microphone?
Oh, yes. I'm just listening to the very interesting conversation going on here. And I mean, having stayed in Thailand, I think as a foreigner, you know that they don't call Thailand amazing Thailand for nothing, right? It's really peculiar. It's a nice place to do research, personally. Many things you see, like two top governments forming a coalition, right? This is. But taking a step back, what I've observed is that I think you'll agree with me that Thai people are very tolerant. They at least if they complain, I wouldn't know what they're saying, but they pretty much let things go the way it should be. But I think these elections, for me, has shown that people want change. It's a strong signal that we have to get away from, we have to do something new. This is what I read from the elections. But as an economist, I have to say something disappointing as well, right? Which is change comes very slowly in Thailand. And I think there's all these bureaucratic layers, this legal legislation, things that small details where people end up arguing and talking about. I mean, they are interesting, but how will it affect the common person on the ground? I think very little, right? So, yes, going back to the economy again, so I don't know, I don't feel there's going to be a big shake-up in the economy. It's just going to flow as it has been doing so for the past 10, 20 years. But that's not to say that progress has not been made. As Professor Chris has shown, over 20, 30 years, you saw the two contrasting pictures. Thailand has made progress, right? It's just that economic progress. It's just that it's not maybe as loud as where I come from, South Korea, right, or in China, but it's always making changes and making changes for the better. And that's what really gives me a lot of optimism when I see the situation right now.
I think Lisa, the other part of the question was about Thaksin, right?
Thaksin, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing time.
Amazing indeed. No, the thing is that I think what I want to add to that is that Purtai has been riding very high during the opinion polls before the elections, but then suddenly Thaksin tweeted that he's going to come back before his birthday sometime in July, right? And then suddenly the numbers tanked. There is the school of thought that that if Thaksin wouldn't have tweeted that, then this wouldn't have happened, or rather that Thaksin has kind of torpedoed Purtai's election chances. That was not the only reason. By far, that was not the only reason why Purtai came in second. But I definitely believe that it has swayed undecided voter against Purtai as well. And then there are other factors. For example, Purtai's uncertainness with who they're going to go into a coalition as well. I mean, they have been accused of not being very outright saying that we're not going to govern with Palang or Prayut as well. I mean, at the very least, only certain individuals in Purtai have been very insistent of that, but not Purtai as a whole. Anyhow, the question of whether or not Thaksin will come back or not, or what factor he still has right now, I mean, I think that the fact that we are still talking about him, after 20 years, the fact that he's been in exile for over 15 years now at this point says everything, that he is still a factor. His shadow is still looming large. And I said before that I was talking about the post-Thaksin era in Thai politics. No, I said that we may have seen the beginning of it, but it doesn't mean that Thaksin is completely out of the picture yet. The fact that he still, is out there and says a lot of things, and says a lot of things about a lot of things, goes to show that, that he is trying to keep himself relevant. However, of course, how do I phrase this? There is going to be a constant negotiation about, the legacy of Thaksin, but also about the person of Thaksin as well, and what role he will still play in this country, either being physically in this country or outside of Thailand as well. And I can definitely imagine that whatever negotiations were ongoing, Purtai move forward was definitely a part of the equation, and whatever what was agreed on is definitely has to be renegotiated, because it is something that is going to be very difficult right now with the political state of play, and then having him in the mix as well is going to be very difficult to reconcile these things together. The problem is simply that, as I said, after all these years, he's still being a factor, but he's also a very controversial figure for a lot of Thais. And it is something that a lot of Thais will probably have trouble to reconcile with the fact that he is still around.
Okay, please. Maybe one or two more questions, please.
Peter Trainer, I'm a club member. Chris Baker said earlier that this election was a turning point, and the panel have agreed that the vote indicates there is a change in Thai politics. The existing military government and the supporters and the Senate have indicated they don't want to change. All of the discussion that we've had is based on the peaceful transition of power. So my question is, does the panel consider that there won't be a peaceful transition of power, that there'll be conflict like there was after 2019 because of the existing power won't accept the transfer of power?
For the change, I think it's showing a change, at least in the electoral, landscapes of Thailand. now we see a lot of young generations, how people vote is really different from the past. And, in the next election, I think all political parties, even the, Pita Thai itself, they are considering themselves to adapt to the new kind of electoral and political scenarios of Thailand. Palang and also the UTN, I don't think they are going to survive in the next election. Palang itself, they have some group of people want to continue and survive the politics, but again, Palang is, it's a political party that consisting of factions. I don't think that they can adapt to the new electoral system or electoral landscapes of Thailand. But I think there's some change on how party will adapt. But the change of power and the change peacefully transfer of power, as I said today, I think for today, I think it's difficult. In the past, the military or the conservative used the military coup to kick out of the democratic side and form the government. But this time, they don't really use the military coups anymore. They use other technique, which is, I think, is more professional. They use the legal terms. They use all the court or some other things that not the military to make it more, legitimate to control the country. So that's why by using all this kind of thing, and as you can see what's have been going on after the elections, I think it's a bit difficult for the transfer of power. And I sort of agree with the same question as Professor Chris just asked. How can we transfer the power without any conflicts or the protests again in Thailand? I think if move forward cannot be a government, there might be possible a protest among the young generation once again. But again, they know how to handle it. As you can see, in the past 2 years, there are no more protests. And this is the way that show that they are also more professional on how to handle politics in Thailand.
I think the question that you were aiming at is, the gist of it is whether or not the current government or the current coalition is going to act in good faith towards whoever is going to come into a new government, and also acting in good faith in the transfer of power. So, I definitely agree with you that that there will be ways. That there will be ways, and that there will be seeking ways to topple this government or topple a move forward led government with any means possible. However, the question is about which set of tools they're going to pick at what order, right? So, classically, to Thai observers, there's always the talk about military coup. So, this is like the very last option that they're taking here. 2006, we had a military coup. 2014, we had a military coup. The justification there is that the 2006 one was not consequential enough. And we have seen, what they have done in the years after the 2014 military coup. They have rewritten the legislative rules. They have rewritten all the political rules in order to make an elected government, or to put as many hurdles as possible for an elected government. And also for the simple fact that we are putting in hurdles, obstacles, and other pieces together so a military coup is not necessary anymore. That there are other ways. We are talking about the word legal warfare a lot as well. So that they are being taken down with maybe legal means. That they are the independent agencies maybe get involved there as well, or other independent bodies like the Constitutional Court get involved there as well. So what I'm trying to say is that, for example, here a military coup in this scenario would be probably the very last resort in a chain of events where all other options have already been exhausted. The sad thing, after covering Thailand for 15 years now, is that the risk of a military coup is never at zero. So it can be high, it can be low, but never at zero. So the problem there simply is that. But if you would ask me right now how likely it is we are seeing any sort of military intervention, I would say not very high at this point, because, as I said, other options have not been exhausted yet. But to your point as well, the question what we heard from Chris Baker, how do we deal with this without creating chaos? I think this is a question that they are thinking about themselves, and they are really mulling what options what they are right now. Or, the optimist case would be like, okay, then let this lot govern first, and then we'll see.
Any more questions? Okay. If not, then I guess I would like to thank all three of you here, and of course I want to thank again Ajahn Chris, who probably may be still watching online, for his help and contribution. And I guess, I think that this is a very fruitful discussion, and it's an ongoing one, of course. We still have probably another month to wait until we see a new government. It's an incredible timeline for Thailand. And on that note, I would like to end the panel discussion. Also, I want to promote our quiz night. We have a quiz night coming up this Friday. So if you're interested in pub quiz, please join us. And if you like this kind of program, please become our member. Thank you. Good night.